At a Yakuza gathering in Japan, leader Oyen sits in quiet fury as three of his men stand before him, having failed their assignment. The penalty is swift and non-negotiable. Each man must sever one of his own fingers as proof of loyalty. Joe and the second man follow through without hesitation, but the third tries to fake it, tucking his finger out of sight behind his hand. Oyen sees straight through the deception and removes the man's head before anyone can react. He then turns to Joe with a single instruction: get to the town of Normal, Minnesota. 3 weeks pass. Ulysses has checked into a motel on the outskirts of Normal, a quiet rural town in the middle of Minnesota that recently lost its sheriff. He's been brought in for an 8-week interim role while the town organizes a proper election. Deputy Mike meets him at the motel and drives him to the station. Normal is exactly what its name suggests: calm, unhurried, almost suspiciously peaceful. With very little actual police work to do, Ulysses fills the quiet hours leaving voicemails for his estranged wife. They've agreed to give each other space, but he keeps calling anyway, narrating his days into her voicemail like letters she'll never answer. On the drive-in, a roadside sign catches his eye: $16.8 million raised for the community. For a town this size, the number makes no sense, and he files it away in the back of his mind. At the station, he steps into his first situation almost immediately. A man named Tom is being openly hostile to the receptionist, Sally. Ulysses shuts it down firmly and calmly, no force required. It turns out Tom has a dispute with his neighbor, so Deputy Blaine agrees to look into it. The rest of the day disappears into paperwork. Curiosity eventually wins out and Ulysses pulls the file on the late Sheriff Gunderson. Cause of death: hypothermia. Among Gunderson's belongings is a handgun engraved with the words "from Dad." Ulysses removes the last remaining bullet and locks the weapon away in the evidence room. A sweep of the station's armory turns up something unexpected. The place is stocked far beyond what a town this size would ever need, including C4 explosives. Sally explains it away easily enough. After 9/11, Gunderson applied for every anti-terrorism grant he could find. That afternoon, Ulysses patrols the streets and leaves a ticket on a car parked badly outside the local bar. The owner, a bartender named Mora, storms out when she spots it until she reads it. It simply says "park better." Her anger deflates into something closer to amusement. That evening at a restaurant, Ulysses notices the walls are lined with old guns. The owner mentions they belong to his grandfather and adds, almost as an afterthought, that they're all still loaded. At another table, Ulysses overhears a man complaining about the Minnesota cold. It's Joe, though Ulysses doesn't know that yet. That night, a dream pulls him back to gunshots and a woman screaming. He wakes in a sweat to an odd sound outside. Gun in hand, he follows a trail of red stains across the snow until he finds the source: a moose wandering through the dark with a paint can lodged on its antlers, leaking red across the white ground. A few days later, Ulysses and Mike respond to a dispute at the hardware store between the owner Maynard and a customer arguing over pricing. They separate the two men. Ulysses tries the reasonable approach, and the moment his back is turned, the argument starts up again. Mike has to raise his voice to end it. While wrapping things up, Ulysses notices a cabinet fitted with an unusual number of locks. Maynard says it holds stump removers and refuses to elaborate. Before Ulysses can press further, a woman named Mary Bate pulls him away to her yarn shop, upset that her supplier sent the wrong order. He notices she has a police scanner on the counter. She calls it company. Mike calls it nosiness. Memorial is held for Gunderson at his home, a home that stops Ulysses cold the moment he sees it. For a small-town sheriff, the place is immaculate and far too expensive. During the mayor's speech, Mike quietly slips Gunderson's badge from the coffin before it closes and pins it to Ulysses' chest. Ulysses wanders the house and spots a photograph: Gunderson standing with a man named Walter, the same doctor who signed the death certificate. Walter appears at his elbow moments later and pours them both a drink. Ulysses asks about the circumstances of the death, and Walter describes how Deputy Blaine found Gunderson frozen outside in nothing but his underwear. The working theory is that he went ice fishing, though Ulysses quietly notes that nobody fishes at night and nobody fishes naked. Walter gestures to the cabinet full of bottles. Gunderson had a drinking problem. Before Ulysses can follow up, Mayor Kidner pulls Walter aside and takes his place. Kidner gets to the point quickly. He's heard that Ulysses runs a loose ship and he likes that. He offers him the sheriff position permanently and tells him to take his time thinking it over. After Kidner walks away, Ulysses looks out the window and watches Blaine blocking the entrance, turning away Alex, Gunderson's only child, before they can come inside. That evening at the restaurant, Ulysses runs into Mora again and she challenges him to pool. Over drinks, she keeps calling him lawman, explaining that she doesn't quite see him as a real sheriff yet. When the place empties out, they keep talking, and eventually Ulysses shares what's been following him. Years ago, in a small town where he used to work, a young woman came to the station saying her father was hurting her. Ulysses didn't believe her. Her father was well respected, and that felt like enough. Later, he was called to her house after neighbors reported gunshots. Her father had already been wounded when Ulysses arrived. The moment she saw him walk through the door, she shot her father again, finishing it. Then she turned the gun on Ulysses. He shot first, she died. It was ruled self-defense, but the justification never settled in his chest the way it was supposed to. His wife couldn't reach him after that and eventually stopped trying. The dream that keeps waking him up is that moment looping. The next morning brings a voicemail from Kidner pressing him again about the sheriff position. On his way out of the motel, Ulysses sees a woman named Lori wrestling with a vending machine and lends a hand. She introduces him to her dog but keeps her body angled to hide the gun at her side. Someone lingers in the background, unwilling to step forward. Ulysses notes it but says nothing. Another slow day of paperwork ends with an odd discovery on his drive home, a van sitting on the roadside. Inside is Alex, sitting with a bottle of whiskey and a gun resting in their lap. Ulysses climbs in without hesitation, takes a sip of the whiskey, and asks about the scene at the memorial. Alex explains that Kidner didn't want them there, they'd be a distraction. Since Alex came out as non-binary, their father and much of the town had made life quietly unbearable. Alex says the town used to stand for something before Kidner took over, and their father chose the town's approval over his own child. Ulysses removes the bullet from the gun without drama and drives Alex to the station, where he puts them in a cell not as punishment, but so they have somewhere warm to sleep. The next morning, an alarm rips through the station. It's the bank. Inside, Lori and her boyfriend Keith are moving through the floor, threatening staff and customers until the manager produces the cash. It amounts to roughly $2,000. Lori is furious. The clerk explains apologetically that almost nobody uses cash anymore. Keith pushes to get into the vault. The clerk stalls, glancing toward the two guards, Joe and his Yakuza colleague. Then a customer clutches his chest and drops. Lori and Keith scramble to help him take his medication, but he loses consciousness. Keith drops to his knees and starts chest compressions. In the commotion, the guards quietly trigger an emergency signal. In Japan, Oyun's men hear a pager alarm labeled Normal, Minnesota. Joe produces a knife and drives it into Keith. Lori opens fire immediately. A bullet tears through Keith's neck. Another catches a guard in the face, causing his weapon to discharge and send Joe crashing through into the next room. Lori collapses beside Keith, convinced he's dying, but he tells her the bullet only grazed him and tells her to keep moving. Outside, the police arrive. The deputies seem off from the moment they step out of the cars, jittery, too tense. Ulysses tells them to hold their position. Before he can reach the door, Blaine gets a phone call. When Ulysses puts his hand on the door, both Blaine and Mike open fire. The blast sends him through the glass. His vest saves him. He orders them to stop. They don't. He fires back. Blaine and Mike burn through ammunition recklessly while Ulysses places his shots carefully. A few rounds are enough to take off most of Blaine's ear. Mike stops caring about civilians entirely, spraying bullets across the street. Ulysses manages to move Lori and Keith to cover, but when he reaches the man who collapsed earlier and lifts him, a bullet finds the man's head. Ulysses and the two robbers vault over the counter together. Mike finally stops. The survivors push out of the bank. Blaine is outside packing snow against the side of his head. Ulysses pulls the bank manager aside and asks him to open the vault. When the door swings open, all three of them go quiet: gold, cash, and crates with no labels. While they're still taking it in, the manager doubles back to his desk to retrieve a gun, trips over a body on the floor, and shoots himself in the head as he falls. In the next room, Joe is slowly coming back around. His vest absorbed the blast. Mike tries the back door and can't get through. Ulysses hears the attempt and puts a round through the door. Mike retreats. In the vault, Lori finds a second bullet wound in Keith's back. When Ulysses returns, the three reach a simple agreement: they'll work together or they won't make it out. The bank phone rings. It's Kidner calling from outside, where he's assembled what looks like the entire town, police and armed civilians. At the same moment, the robbers crack open the crates and find military-grade weapons inside. Kidner explains everything with the calm of someone who's been rehearsing it. Small towns like Normal have two choices: die slowly or adapt. The town struck a deal with the Yakuza, who needed somewhere inside the country to store and move illegal contraband. Normal provides the space. The Yakuza provide the money. Almost everyone in town agreed to the arrangement. Kidner chose Ulysses specifically because his reputation suggested someone who didn't ask too many questions. If the Yakuza find out their bank was compromised, they'll wipe the town off the map. So Ulysses has a simple choice: kill the robbers or be killed alongside them. Ulysses hangs up. Outside, a moose wanders into the street and Kidner is briefly distracted. The storm has already knocked out power across the whole town. Then something flies out of a bank window and detonates directly where Kidner was standing. Ulysses had found a bazooka in the crates and fired it, though he admits his aim was off. A second shot takes out a row of police cars, scattering officers in every direction. Once the bazooka runs dry, the three of them pour through the door, firing handguns. pushing deep enough into the chaos to run. On the other side of town, Tom is complaining loudly about all of it until Joe steps out of nowhere and shoots him. The storm has severed the phone lines, which means Joe hasn't been able to reach Oyen. Oyen, convinced his operation has been compromised, is already on a plane to Minnesota. A cop finds the trio in the middle of a street. Ulysses sends Lori and Keith to cover and handles it alone. He wins the exchange with minimal shots and catches up with them at Mary Bates' yarn shop where they've taken shelter. The darkness inside moves unexpectedly and Mary Bates steps forward, cheerful and helpful. Then her radio crackles, someone asking her to stop the fugitives. The warmth drops off her face. She pulls a gun. Ulysses throws himself behind the shelves. A bullet punches through a door and cold air floods in as she reloads. Lori returns fire to keep Mary Bates' head down while Ulysses shoves a shelving unit toward her. It pins her in place long enough for Lori to rush her, throw her over the counter, and find a hidden gun on the other side. Mary Bates gets a hand on it, but Lori picks up a sewing needle and drives it into her neck. Ulysses patches Keith's wounds with tape and tells them the station has a snowplow in the garage. They head out. The mailman sees them from across the street and opens fire. Ulysses goes through a hardware store window. The alarm inside begins screaming. He calls to Lori and Keith that he's fine, vest and all, and waves them on. The mailman goes after the couple while Maynard closes in on Ulysses with a crowbar. Ulysses grabs a shovel. The two of them go at it between the shelves, the sprinklers trigger in the chaos, soaking everything. When Maynard swings an axe, Ulysses sprays insecticide directly into his eyes and drives a nail into the socket. Maynard staggers toward his locked cabinet and Ulysses hits him from behind. The impact sends his head into the cabinet with enough force to push the nail all the way through. Inside the cabinet, flares and dynamite. On another street, Lori and Keith keep ducking and moving as the mailman hunts them. When he stops to reload, Keith swings a gold brick he'd quietly pocketed from the vault. Lori jumps in to help. The mailman's gun snags the cable holding a street sign overhead. Keith gets the weapon out of his hands but gets punched hard enough to go down. The mailman goes for his knife and advances on Lori. Keith grabs the gun but it's out of rounds. The sign above them comes free and drops straight onto the mailman. Police appear at the end of the street before anyone can breathe and Lori and Keith are running again. A single flare lands in the middle of a street nearby. A priest picks it up and tells everyone to relax, it's nothing. More land, nobody reacts, then they start going off. Ulysses had dropped one real flare as a decoy and thrown dynamite for the rest. Several men go down. Mike scoops up one of the sticks, tells everyone he's handling it, announces himself a hero, and is killed when it goes off anyway. Ulysses keeps throwing until the street is either empty or unconscious. At the station garage, Keith and Lori coax the snowplow to life after a few failed attempts. Sally hears the engine and comes in with her gun drawn. Ulysses intercepts her before she reaches them and the two wrestle across the garage floor. Sally catches her foot on a cable and goes down just as a police car rolls off its platform and lands on top of her. Ulysses turns to Lori and Keith and tells them he's done running. They should take the snowplow, take the gold, and go build something. He pushes the garage door open and watches them drive away. The remaining team spots the plow in the distance and turns toward the station. Ulysses walks into the armory and starts gearing up. When he steps back outside, Moira is waiting for him. She shoots him center mass. He goes down. The vest holds but breathing feels like trying to inhale through wet concrete. Moira crouches beside him and trades him a flask of whiskey for his guns. She says she thinks he changed the ending of the story he told her. He admits he did. The real version is that he was the one who shot the father, not in self-defense, but because in that moment it felt like the right thing to do. He's been carrying it like a stone ever since. Then he looks at her and says she's the one who killed Gunderson. She doesn't deny it. Gunderson had decided he wanted out of the arrangement, wanted to be a real father to Alex before it was too late, but the Yakuza don't allow exits. So Moira slipped a sedative into his drink, dragged him outside in his underwear, and let the Minnesota winter finish the job. She wrote it up as a fishing accident and no one looked twice. Then Alex's belt whips through the cell bars and catches Moira's gun. One hard pull brings her stumbling forward. Alex takes the weapon and fires until there's nothing left. Ulysses hands Alex Gunderson's gun and makes it official, new deputy. When the team arrives outside the garage, Alex rolls out in a truck and drives straight at them. Everyone scatters. Walter doesn't move fast enough and the truck runs him down. Alex crashes into the bank's entrance and drops into the vault to wire up the dynamite. At the same moment, Ulysses gets on Blaine's radio and makes the team a simple proposition: if he dies, the vault goes up. But he has a better idea. They find him at the ice cream shop eating a bowl in full calm. He lays it out plainly. They clean everything up, make the bank look like nothing worse than a fender bender, and when Oyen arrives he sees a normal town with a normal vault. Joe asks why he shouldn't just kill Ulysses where he sits. Ulysses points out that Joe will be buried in the same collapse. Oyen won't spare the man who was supposed to be guarding the place. The town has no real choice. For the next several hours, Normal does something genuinely unprecedented. Every person who's been trying to kill Ulysses spends the night helping him clean up the evidence. Blood mopped, bodies moved, broken glass swept, story rehearsed. At the edge of town, Ulysses and Blaine stand in the road to meet the Yakuza convoy. Blaine tells Owen the power's been out since the storm and that Ulysses is just a temporary fill-in who doesn't know anything. Ulysses plays the part, polite, slightly dim, apologetic about the weather. Oyen pushes to enter regardless. Ulysses sighs and pretends to make an exception. The convoy is taken on the longest possible route to buy time, and when they finally reach the bank, Alex is posted at the entrance in a guard uniform with the detonator in a pocket. Oyen inspects the vault. Everything is exactly as it should be. He's satisfied. Dinner is arranged at the restaurant. Blaine rises to give a toast about new beginnings and a strengthened partnership. A waiter pops a champagne cork. It ricochets off a wall decoration. The decoration falls. A loaded gun on the wall fires. The round takes the top of Oyen's head clean off. Every Yakuza member in the room draws a weapon simultaneously. The restaurant becomes a war zone. Joe finds Blaine in the chaos and puts a bullet in his shoulder. He's closing in on him when Ulysses intervenes and the two of them crash into the kitchen. They fight through every surface available: pots, utensils, open flames. Joe lands a knife in Ulysses' stomach. Ulysses breaks Joe's hand and drives the knife into Joe's neck. He leaves him on the kitchen floor. In the dining room, the shooting slowly burns itself out. When the last gun goes quiet, two people are still standing, Alex and Blaine. Ulysses walks out of the kitchen and sets a slice of pie on the table. He gives Blaine back the badge. A month later, Normal has returned to exactly what its name suggests. Blaine is sheriff. The town is quiet, though a man on the street, unfamiliar, watching, hints that something may not be entirely finished. In Texas, Ulysses is on another interim job in another small town. Alex is with him, writing deputy. He picks up his phone to leave his wife the usual voicemail. This time she answers.